I want to be a great communicator, not just average or even effective, great. So I'm diving deeply into how Jesus communicated. In my opinion, he's the greatest ever. And if I want to reach greatness, he's the example most worthy of my attention. Thus far, I'm most intrigued by how often he reiterated what he already said. Jesus wasn't in a rush to get to the next topic. That's in stark contrast to our modern context where social media relentlessly teases the next post, reel, or long form content. But Jesus employed reiteration like it was his job, like he didn't have a short time to communicate many truths to people who needed them. He kept saying the same things repeatedly. I'm still discovering the beauty of this communication technique. Here's what I found already. Jesus used reiteration because he focused on learning, not laughs and likes. We're an entertainment driven generation, so finding the next thrill is a big deal. Learning, on the other hand, is a slow walk. It's different from entertainment. Matter of fact, let's make that a note to self. Get this down. Learning differs from entertainment. Think of the difference between a movie and school, and you'll quickly understand what I'm saying. Most movies are a couple of hours max. School, on the other hand, is a lengthy commitment, often requiring years at a minimum. When your intended outcome is learning, you must slow down the pace so that the message sent isn't just message received. It ultimately becomes life lived. Let's make another note to self right here. Write this down. The end of learning isn't message received. It's life transformed. Jesus focused on education and empowerment, not entertainment. Here are two ways he reiterated what he said to ensure learning. First, he shared differently. Jesus often used an alternative example to share the same message with crowds. The following verses are proof. Then Jesus taught them another parable. Heaven's kingdom can be compared to the tiny mustard seed that a man takes and plants in his field. Although the smallest of all the seeds, it eventually grows into the greatest of garden plants, becoming a tree for birds to come and build their nests in its branches. Then he taught them another parable. Heaven's kingdom can be compared to yeast that a woman takes and blends into 3 measures of flour and then waits until all the dough rises. That's Matthew 13, verses 31 through 33 from the Passion Translation. Notice the flow of the conversation. First, Jesus explained the kingdom of heaven like a mustard seed. Rather than going to another topic, which he easily could have done, he reiterated the kingdom of heaven with a different example, yeast. Here's the beauty of sharing differently. It gives the audience a greater chance of receiving the intended message. Whether you realize it or not, audiences aren't homogeneous. People from varied walks of life are in each crowd, so more examples increase the probability of more people understanding the message. Here's the second thing Jesus did. He shared deeper. With those hungry for more of what he shared, he went deeper. Here's an example. Afterward, Jesus' disciples and those close to him remained behind to ask Jesus about his parables. He said to them, "The privilege of intimately knowing the mystery of God's kingdom realm has been granted to you, but not to the others, where everything is revealed in parables." Then he said to them, "If you don't understand this parable, how will you understand any parable? Let me explain. The farmer sows the message of the kingdom." All of that was Mark 4, verses 10 and 11, and verses 13 and 14 from the Passion Translation. After hearing an example of Jesus sharing differently, his inner circle, those who took his teachings to heart, wanted more of where that came from. Their hunger for understanding led to an unlocking. Jesus shared the real meaning behind the message he shared as a parable publicly. Here's the value added in this approach: selective messaging. Jesus knew who to go deep with and with whom to keep it surface level. In other words, he saved the deep truths for those who could handle it, but still on the same topic. Why did he reiterate? This is perhaps the best part of this conversation. Faith, the outcome Jesus desired most in his audiences, happens over time. Listen to how this verse captured it. So then faith comes from hearing the message, and the message comes through preaching Christ. That's Romans 10:17 from the Good News Translation. Let's process this slowly because it's easy to miss. Faith comes from hearing, active tense. That means faith happens through hearing over time. Just think about how long it took you to believe anything. It likely wasn't after the very first time you heard it. Most of what we now believe is because we heard the same things over and over, whether from credible or questionable sources. Jesus kept saying the same things until he observed faith, which shows up in our life. If you want to be a great communicator like Jesus, practice reiteration. Share the same messages differently or deeper. Add this skill to your repertoire, and you'll be on the path to being a great communicator like Jesus, just like I hope to be. Reiteration is just one of four specific techniques Jesus used to share messages publicly like no one else in history. If you're curious about the other techniques, just hang around to the end of this video if you're watching on YouTube, or check the description or associated blog posts for a link to explore them. And I certainly haven't covered all there is to know about reiteration. How has this technique worked in your communication? How have you experienced it from God? Let me know in the comments. When God says so, I'll be back with another video. Until then, use reiteration to enhance your communication skills just like Jesus. Have an incredible day.